How do we start? Suppose we have this in your exam. You have a picture of a flea, and the professor asks you to comment on that picture. What would you do? Or a compass with 2 legs. Just a compass. Comment. Of course, if you have not been attending, you have no comment to make. Or if you have been attending with an absent-mindedness in it, nothing. What can you say about a picture of a compass or a picture of a flea? Where should I start? How should I develop my topic? How should I conclude? And so on. How much should I put in the essay? Should it be an essay or simply an answer to a question? What would it be? Since it is a picture without a question, it should be a comment. And a comment is not just any comment. It's a comment based on an argumentative essay. The argumentative essay would start with an introduction. What would be in the introduction? What should you say in the introduction? Nothing? A student may start like this. The flea is a sign of a lack of hygiene. And it will get 2 zeros like this. You know? Why? Because the professor who asked this question is a professor of literature who has taught the flea in relation to one specific context, which is the metaphysical poetry context. And therefore, the student should concentrate on that context. I have given enough for you to write an essay on the flea. What would be your introduction? Some stupid people came to me pretending seriously about studies and saying, why don't you give us a bibliography of the books we have to read? I've written books. Books. I've read millions of books to be able to lecture in English about English literature. Take your earring count.
Maybe we could start by introducing what metaphysical poetry is about, with a specific...
Start with introduction. Totally irrelevant. You have the flea, that's your main point. What should you speak about metaphysical poetry? It would be a waste of time and waste of energy instead of concentration on the flea itself. What should I say?
I would say that the flea itself is the name of a poem by John Donne.
Okay, good. That's a good introduction. This refers to a poem by John Donne. It has a close relationship with the concept of conceit, which forms a major part of metaphysical poetry. It is a tool used by the metaphysical poet. That's how we develop. And I know what I'm talking about. I can bring you your copies of poetry and read them to you. And you will see what I mean. of conceit is extremely important to be discussed in the following essay. Why? Because the flea itself constitutes a major part of the poem as a whole. What does the poet want to say through the flea? We have already defined conceit as a very complex kind of comparison between things that are totally different from each other. It is not a simple metaphor in the conventional sense of metaphor. It is especially developed by the metaphysical poets, in particular John Donne, because in his poetry, the conceit plays a very important role in the total understanding of the poem as a whole. Without understanding conceit in John Donne's poetry, we cannot understand anything. And I developed this idea because the objective is to see whether the student has been following the lecture on that particular poem called Flea, whether the student has gathered information about metaphysical poetry in particular, and about the tool used by the poet called conceit. Some teachers prefer to give a definition of conceit. What is conceit? Define what is conceit. That's ridiculous. No. I want to use a way of reflecting upon the poem in an intelligent way, without even having certain knowledge or huge knowledge on metaphysical poetry. I can deal with the question because it's an analytical question. It's not a narration of events. What else could I say? What else could I include in my essay? I should speak about the poem now, the structure. The structure point of view is very important in modern criticism. And we have been following modern criticism. Modern criticism is the criticism that focuses attention on both structure and themes. The structure is extremely important, especially in metaphysical poetry. I've already mentioned in one of my lectures the fact that structure in metaphysical poetry has a very important significance for the poet and for the reader. Sometimes the poet includes the theme inside the structure of the poem itself, like Easter wings. The poem is actually shaped like the wings of a bird. From a symbolic point of view, look at the way I'm talking about it. This is not extraordinary. It's very simple. I state something, I have to explain it clearly. The poet has used the shape of his poem Easter wings symbolically. And what do I mean by using the poem symbolically? Symbolically because the Easter wing is a reference to the resurrection of Jesus Christ to the sky. And in order to resurrect, you need to grow wings in order to fly up to the sky. That's the way the Christian conceive of the concept of resurrection. A resurrection in Arabic is not the same. A resurrection means rafa. And Allah says, رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ بَلْ رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. And then a rafa is not like a resurrection. our conception of resurrection is totally different. So when we deal with a poem like Easter Wings, Forbidden Morning, The Flea, any poems by any metaphysical poet, we must focus attention on imagery, on metaphors, on conceit. Language is not a problem. Why? Because the language of metaphysical poetry is very simple. It is the ideas behind the lines of verse that concern us most, because you would never understand exactly what the poem is about unless we have studied a great deal of criticism on that poem. Without it, we may miss the point altogether. Like The Flea, when you read the first stanza, you have the impression that this is a dirty-minded poet who is speaking about, or who is vulgarizing the notion of chastity, since he is talking about the deflowering of a woman as if it were the bite of a flea. And I include this into my essay. All of these ideas are included. I'm speaking about the flea, not just about an insect. No, I am speaking about all the cultural, religious, and poetic dimensions of the word flea as it is used by John Donne. He's not just using a flea just like that. He's using it and giving it different dimensions. I, as a student, have to be aware of these dimensions. And this is all provided in the lectures about the flea. And we have repeated the poem more than once in order to be able to grasp the difficult meaning contained within the poem. I also talk about stanzas, 3 different stanzas. And I say, first stanza makes the poet sound like a vulgar poet talking about chastity in a vulgar way. But when we reach stanza 3, we change our mind about the impression we had when we read the first stanza. Then we come to the realization that that kind of humor used by the poet was meant to deviate us, or deviate from the topic of his concern, which is the love of God. Love of God? We're talking about a love of God here? Yes, we are. That's what metaphysical poetry is. It starts with a shocking statement, like it is the case here, a shocking statement of someone who is getting on to a woman. You have to understand what is getting on to a woman means. يعني كيصير العربية مش فهمت زين. He is getting on to a woman by simply using words that the vulgar people use in order to get on to a woman. Very vulgar indeed. Yet, by the end of the poem, we come to the realization that the poet is speaking about unison. Not just unison of lovers, but unison of man with God. How could that be? Well, there is a principle in metaphysical poetry which is based on a mixture of the sensual with the spiritual. What is the sensual? When we talk about the unison, the sexual intercourse between the lovers. And this leads to the spiritual. That's the way they see things. We don't have this, alhamdulillah. We don't vulgarize our religion or our faith. Our faith is pure faith. Theirs is very difficult. What has sex to do with religion? We have already seen this in ecstasy. And I mentioned the fact that ecstasy, first of all, in terms of sex, it means orgasm.
the pleasure that the couple have when they have sex. That's ecstasy. But the writer goes further into the word ecstasy and ends up convincing us that the ecstasy he's speaking about is the ecstasy that man feels when he is in total unison with God. As we say in Moroccan Arabic, what is the connection? Well, for them there is a connection, since in their mind there is a mixture of the sensual and the spiritual. Notice that Shakespeare or Sir Philip Sidney, both of them have totally rejected this idea. If we are doing a comparative study of Shakespeare and Sidney, in comparison with John Donne, we must mention this fact. The fact that Sidney, for him, love of God is based on purity. For John Donne, the love of God is based, first of all, on the love of men. We start with sensuality or sensualism, then we end up with pure love of God. It's not very convincing, but that's the way they work through their poetry. That's the way metaphysical poetry is. We get mixed up. Is the poet speaking about a lady who is being wooed by her lover, and that's it? Is he speaking about sex only? Is he speaking about crude sex? Or is he speaking about sex that allows him to transcend the physical into the spiritual? And that's exactly what it is. Why? Because for the metaphysical poets, there is the transcendence of the body into the spirit. I'm not convinced. Why? Why am I not convinced? Because my faith tells me that when I go and do my prayers, I have to clean myself first. Tatahur. A tatahur is not just cleaning with water. A tatahur implies the cleansing. Tatahur, not cleaning. The tatahur is the cleansing of the soul. You have to cleanse your soul before you do the ablutions. Ablutions are easy. This is cleaning. Ghasl. Or ightisal. It depends on the case. That's physical. But a tatahur is your heart, your emotions. You need to be pure in order to confront God. This is not the case here. We need to be aware of these differences. As Muslims, we need to read a poetry, and we need to be aware of its dangerous impact on us. Otherwise, we will end up becoming like John Donne and say, well, yes, why shouldn't we have sex and have lots of it? Shakespeare tells us no. The expense of spirits in a waste of shame. In a waste of shame. What does Shakespeare mean? Shakespeare is telling us that the strength of the spirit, the human spirit, weakens, becomes very weak when it thinks only about sex. If all your concentration is on sex, you lose your mind. You become murderous. You become guilty of lots of things. That's what the whole sonnets by Shakespeare, the expense of spirit in a waste of shame, means. And I've already explained how Shakespeare's language is not that of John Donne. Shakespeare's language, very sophisticated language. The metaphors, the implications, the allusions in Shakespeare's sonnets have nothing to do with John Donne. John Donne does not use any complicated images except for the conceit. And the conceit, we can solve that problem by simply saying conceit means a metaphor in which two things that are totally separated are put together. The compass. What has a compass of a draftsman to do? You know what a draftsman is? What does a draftsman do? He draws plans. An architect, when he wants to build something, he goes to a draftsman. The draftsman draws the plans for him. He tells him what he wants to do, and then he does the drafting. He does the planning of the construction of a building. So he uses a compass. What has the legs of the compass to do with people in general? Do I look like a compass? Do my legs look like a compass? Unless I am Oliver, Popeye the Sailor's girlfriend. She had legs like that, but that's cartoon. Yeah? We're talking about something serious here. So, what is the connection? The connection lies in the fact that the poet is speaking about strong, solid tie between two lovers. Why it's strong? Why use a compass? Because the compass, two legs, one of them is fixed, the other can move. So when one moves, the other follows. And this is extremely important to understand in order to be able to read through the poem and understand its implications and its allusions. How about the flea? What has the flea to do with love? Well, again, the writer tells us that if the woman refuses to unite her soul to that of her lover, it is already done by a flea, thus demystifying the concept of unison and the concept of chastity, as if the poet is saying in simple English, what is chastity anyway? What is the significance of that little drop of blood that comes out of a woman when she is deflowered? And he's trying to convince us about this. But of course, if we were real Muslim, we will oppose him totally and say no. Purity is important for the unison between two people. The unison of two lovers for sex lasts a very short time. As soon as you enjoy it, at the beginning it looks like a joy. As I'm quoting Shakespeare without using the lines. As soon as we get that joy, it becomes a woo. It turns into an enemy. The friend turns into an enemy. What is this about? Sex, for sex's sake, as Shakespeare has told us. But if it is sex that is unison between two people who have been united through the sacred relationship of marriage, that's something else. And that's what God and His Prophet insist on. The Prophet insisted on young people fasting in order to be able to control themselves. Because when a young man is young, he has sex. He has sexual drives. Normal, natural. How does he control himself? Discipline. Why discipline? Because fasting is not just stopping from eating. It is also a kind of discipline. You fast on words. You fast on looks. You fast on lots of things. That's the real fasting. But if you fast for hunger, your reward won't reach you. You won't get any reward from it. You will be just wasting your time and your energy. John Donne really mixes the reader up by dealing with deeply religious questions in a very unsophisticated manner. And that's what conceit is about. How? The flea is a perfect example. The flea makes us believe maybe John Donne wrote this when he was young. And how about the rest of the poem? How about what the critics tell me? The critics tell me that the flea is not just about sex and about two lovers. It is about divine love. There is an attempt by the poet to transcend from the physical from the sensual, physical, to the spiritual, the divine. When he talks about the curse, the title itself is well chosen. The metaphysical poets always choose their title very carefully. Simple words, curse, like the flea, like the bait, curse. You cannot understand the curse unless you have a priori knowledge. What is a priori knowledge? When your mind has read a lot about the Christian religion and about the way the Christian religion is exploited in literature. Extremely important to do that. I need to understand the concept of a curse in relation to Christians. Because the Christian believe very strongly in the fact that living is a curse. A curse from God. Living is a curse because Adam disobeyed the order of God and therefore he was accursed. And he نزلت عليه لعنة الله. Okay? How do we see it ourselves? Differently. Why? Because the Holy Book tells us that Adam received words from his God and he forgave him. تاب عليه. No curse anymore. The curse is repeated in the story of Adam and his sons. The curse is repeated through the sons who are going to fight. There is a symbol in literature, Christian literature, the symbol of the curse of Cain. How? The mark on his forehead. One of the brothers who received the blow from his brother had a mark on his forehead. And that mark is the mark of curse. First of all, there is no description of such a fight between the brothers in the Quran. The Quran says simply that they tried to get close to God by an offering. One of the offerings was accepted, whereas the others was not accepted, because God knows who is sincere and who is not. This caused jealousy between the brothers, and one brother kills the other. Were they accursed? There is no mentioning of the brothers being accursed. On the contrary, God sent a bird to show one of the brothers how to bury the body of his brother. It is a sign of forgiveness. If you deny God his forgiveness, then you deny him one of the qualities. God is the forgiving. Ar-Ra'uf, Ar-Rahim, Al-Ghaffar, At-Tawwab. All of these words refer to this particular capability of God to forgive. Man does not forgive. And the Christians have this belief, especially the Calvinists. The Calvinists go to the extent of saying that only a selection of people will be allowed to enter heaven. The rest is all going to go to hell. Why? Because the rest is accursed. If we follow John Donne in his explanation of the curse, then we will be misled into thinking that God has accursed us. Whereas God has given us the chance to live and be examined. خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. Full stop, very easy, very simple. You don't need to study al-balagha in order to understand these simple statements. This is a concept of how life should be. This is a perfect explanation of the meaning of the essence of existence. What is the essence of existence? Why are we here? Why do we exist? We exist to do what Allah has told us to do. لِيَبْلُوَكُمُ أَيُّكُمُ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. إذا العمل what? That is going to be your ticket to heaven. Nothing else. Not who you were or what achievement you made. Just amal. Amal that is between you and God. Not amal here. Not teacher or a mechanic or whatever. All of these are trivial things that will die with man himself. Al-amal is what you were supposed to do. What you were dictated. Whether you have followed them. Al-bala is very complex word. Bala in the sense of, God, I have money here. I can steal it and nobody will know anything about it. And yet I don't go and steal it. Why? Because I know that there is someone watching over me. I need to know that. Who is the killer? Those who don't fear God's wrath. اللي ما تخافش من غضب الله هو القمار هو الشفاق هو الزاني هو كل شيء. All the bad things are related to those who don't fear God. Those who fear God feel His presence everywhere. Feel that He's watching over them all the time. But if they don't have that fear, they can do anything. You know? The fear is transcended by being bad. The curse is also related to the notion of the fall. A notion that I have repeated many times and I will still repeat. Why? Because all writers of all times have been obsessed by this notion of the fall. The fall of what? The fall of Adam. But for them it's not just Adam who fell. Man keeps falling all the time. Whenever he commits a bad deed, he has fallen. When he tries to regain repentance from God, he rises again. He keeps rising and falling. Rising and falling. Rising and falling until the end. This is the way they interpret life in a religious way. But for the Calvinists, there is no amal for them. Whatever you do, you're not sure that you're going to be among those who go to heaven. No. There's only one category of people called the elect. Elect with a capital letter. Only those can go to. Some people sometimes argue that, well, even in Islam, there is the notion of the elect. How? Well, they say, well, some people have already been told that they will be in heaven. Among them are the Prophet's Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet. Well, this is something else. Allah still gives you the chance to fight against evil, to fight in order to stay erect, not to fall. And this idea of falling goes with us until the end, until the resurrection day. When you walk on the sirat, you have to walk erect. There are those who walk erect very swiftly on the sirat. And the sirat for them is mustaqim, as-sirat al-mustaqim. Why? Because they can walk swiftly. How? How? Their deeds, العمل ديالهم هو اللي خلاه يوقف. He is able to walk on the sirat because of his deeds. How about the others? The metaphor of the Quran says, يمشي منكبا على وجهه. منكبا على وجهه. وجه ديالو الأرض يمه. Why? Because he has done bad deeds. He has been a hypocrite, he has been a liar, he cheated, and so on and so forth. And therefore, he cannot walk straight. He keeps falling, rising, falling, rising. And sometimes he can fall into the pit totally and be destroyed by fire. Is this a curse? No. If you say that God has made me or destined me to sin, are you right or wrong? You are totally wrong. You are denying the fact that God has given your brain to distinguish between what is good and what is evil. What are the things that leads towards heaven and what are the things that leads toward hell? Notice that these metaphors are used by John Donne in an ironic way. When he talks about the heaven that leads somewhere, that leads to peace and quiet. What is the heaven that leads to peace and quiet? The unison between the two lovers. In this case, we can talk about a demystification of the concept of unison between God and man. How about debate? What is debate about? Of course, I will not go through a detailed analysis of it. It's not important for me. Just the concept is important. The concept that the Christians, particularly the Catholic Christians, believe that living on earth is a curse. Living on earth is a curse. That's how they see it. Islam has never stated this fact except that you can make your life a curse or a benediction. Your choice. Make your life a benediction, ni'mah or niqmah. Benediction or a curse. You have a choice. If you choose. We finish. If you decide that your life is going to be one straightforward line of thought, then you are saved. And nobody saves you. The Christian believe in Jesus Christ being the Savior. And this is where they go wrong. Because you have your own responsibility towards your own deeds, towards your own doings. You cannot rely on the prophet or on anybody else except yourself. You have only yourself to blame, nobody else. The Christian believe that if I embrace the Christian faith, especially the one that includes Jesus as the Son of God, I will be saved. What do we say? If I believe this to be true, then I am kafir. Why? Because my faith tells me that there is only one God, and He has no son and no companion. Only one God. In the uniqueness of God is our faith. Only in that. وحدانية الإله. It's the most important part of my faith. In other faiths, they have partnership, shuraka ma'allah, partnership. They create partnership between God and other people. The relationship between God and other people is too distant. You have to make a distance between you and your Creator. You have to feel that you are an insignificant creature whom God can crush like you crush a flea. Your life can be taken away from you in a twinkle. And therefore you are nothing. You cannot compare yourself to God. The Bait is a poem about temptation. The main theme is temptation. What is the bait? The bait is not related only to the flesh, to the human body. It's related to anything that attracts you to it, especially when it is negative, bad. Again, the first stanza is similar to the flea, in which the poet is talking about wooing a woman. How? Come, live with me, and be my love, and we will some new pleasures prove, of golden sands and crystal brooks, with silken lines and silver hooks. What kind of language is this? This is the language of womanizers. You know what a womanizer is? Someone who's always thinking about women all the time. That's what a womanizer is. This is the language of a womanizer. He is trying to woo the woman, convince her to give herself entirely to him. And he is involved in nature in the process. Nature. How? Golden sands and crystal brooks. He's trying to create a romantic atmosphere for the lovers to be in. And the romantic atmosphere involves what? Trees, the rivers, the brooks, and so on. Silken lines and silver hooks. The hook is silver, yes? You know what a hook is?
Yes.
Sunnah. Why use a hook here? Because the hook is the lure. The hook is what we use in order to catch a fish. But we don't use it alone. We need a bait. In order to attract fish, we need a bait. The bait is a worm or something else that attracts fish to it. There will the river whispering run. Look at the romantic connection. There is some kind of romanticism in John Donne's poetry, particularly when he describes nature. But he does that only to create some kind of a love relationship based on a romantic relationship. There will the river whispering run. You can imagine two lovers lying on the grass and the river is running and whispering. There are places in Morocco where you find this, you know. There are places, for example, in Ifran, there was a place where the two lovers used to go. And where? Ain Vitel. It's a kind of a fall, a waterfall. They love that place because it inspires them with romanticism. Unfortunately, some people take bottles of wine with them there to make it more romantic. There will the river whispering run, warmed by thine eyes. The river, which is cold, will be warmed by the eyes of this woman. The exaggeration, the hyperbolic language, which is a heritage of the 16th century. Right? The eyes of a woman will will warm up the river. Warmed by thine eyes more than the sun, mind you. The heat of the sun is so strong, it's impossible to bear. Impossible. You know, there's a description of how people will be standing waiting for their judgment and the sun coming down. Some of the people will be sweating so much that they will drown in their own sweat. These are the accursed ones. Huh? There will be so much heat that people will be sweating, and the sweat will turn into a river. For those who are bad, the sweat, they will drown in their own sweat. Maybe your eyes are much stronger than that sun. No, of course not. Warmed by thine eyes more than the sun. And there the enamored fish will stay, begging themselves they may be trained. The fish will see your eyes in the river, and they will be caught. You don't need a bait for them. They will be caught by the shining of your eyes into the water. Yes, subhanAllah. Begging themselves to be caught. When thou wilt swim in that live bath. Live bath is the river. Live, why? Because it's running water, flowing water. That's what he means by live bath. When thou wilt swim in that live bath, each fish which every channel had will amorously to thee swim, gladder to catch thee than thou him. The fish is normally something we fish with a hook, right? Now, there's no hook. There's only the lady swimming in the river. And what happens? All the fish come to her. You know? She will be luring the fish to her. And they are not going to be caught because the lady wants to catch them. No, because they are willing to be caught. They're so mesmerized by the beauty of the eyes that they will be caught. This is hyperbolic language, and this is the heritage of the 16th century. Courtly love poetry. I mean, there is definitely a connection between metaphysical poetry and Renaissance poetry. Definitely. I have already mentioned the fact that Sydney has some kind of a metaphysical sense in his poetry. Although we don't call Sydney's poetry metaphysical. We call it Renaissance poetry, courtly love poetry. But there are some resemblances. The fish not only come to you, but they come amorously. They're in love with this woman, right? If thou to be so seen, best loathed by sun or moon, thou darkenest both. In other words, your beauty is so strong that it will darken the beauty of the sun and the moon. I notice that some Arab poets have used this kind of metaphor in their hyperbolic poetry, where they talk about the beauty of a woman that goes beyond the beauty of the moon itself. When you are present, we don't need the sun and we don't need the moon. Both are sources of energy. Yeah? And this woman, when she is present with you, you don't need electricity. You don't need the moon. You don't need the sun. because she shines. She brightens up your life. And in that's what he's saying in simple words. We use this metaphor in our language, but we don't go to the exaggerations that John Donne goes to in this. I really don't totally agree with metaphysical poetry being purely religious poetry. It's not. This is the case. If it were purely religious, the poet would not have thought about these metaphors. These are ridiculous metaphors. So, if you happen to be with a woman like this, you will say yourself, the Lidek invoice. You won't pay anything. Because her heat will warm you and enlighten your life at the same time. Let others freeze with angling reeds and cut their legs with shells and weeds. How could people cut their legs with shells and eggs? If you're walking on the beach, what would happen to you if you walk barefooted? You can be hurt. Why? Because there are shells. You can walk on a shell and cut your foot by walking on a shell. Let others freeze with angling reeds and cut their legs with shells and weeds. Or treacherously poor fish beset with strangling snare or windowy net. Let people who are not like you be hurt by the shells they walk on because they can't see, because they are not related to you. But I can see because you are brightening up my life. Let the fish that are treacherous run away. We don't need them. Treacherous fish are not good. Allow only the fish that have fallen in love with you to come to you. Let coarse, bold hands from slimy nest the bedded fish in banks outrest. Now he's talking about fishermen. How do we know? Let coarse, bold hands. If you have studied Ernest Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea, and you remember the descriptions of the hands that are similar to this, Hemingway was also a poet in his own way. He didn't write poetry, but he was a poet in his way of narration. Most of his books, particularly The Old Man and the Sea, are very poetic in texture, not in language. The texture of Hemingway's novels is very romantic, in spite of the shocking existentialist ideas that they contain. The description of the old man's hands are very similar. Why? Because the fisherman, it's hard to do fishing. You handle the net, and the net can cut you, can make your hands coarse. You handle the line, speed, it can be very dangerous. In some descriptions in The Old Man and the Sea, the old man is going to be cut on his shoulder. Why? Because you throw the line over his shoulder in order to be able to keep the fish with him. And finally, what happens? The fish is gone. By the end of the novel, the fisherman comes to the shore with a skeleton of a fish instead of a fish. Well, but these are symbolic things. You cannot explain these things without understanding the symbolic dimension of every single scene in The Old Man and the Sea is based on symbols. Hemingway was influenced by the symbolist poets, the French symbolist poets. They invented symbolism in poetry. And Hemingway and other writers, Ezra Pound, the same thing. Henry James, all of the modernist American writers were influenced by symbolism. The symbolism that we have here is crude symbolism. You know what crude means? Crude means not embellished. Khadar. Crude, that's crude. There is no embellishment of the words. Let coarse, bold hands from slimy nest. A slimy nest. What is a slimy nest? What is slim?
Thin.
Thin. Okay, so slimy nest means a net that is very thin. Why thin? And the holes in the net is very small. Why? Why is that necessary? In order to keep the fish in the net. Because if the hole is big and it's coarse, it can get out, it can run away. Let coarse bold hands from slimy nest, the bedded fish in banks out rest. Let them fight against the fish. The fishermen, let them fish the way they have always fished. But you are going to be fishing in a different way. By just being there, you're going to lure the fish and catch it. For thee, thou needest no such deceit. You don't need to deceive the fish in order to catch it. Because your beauty is the bait itself. So, what does he do here? The poet turns the beloved lady into a bait itself. But a bait that is very practical. Because it can draw the attention of fish much more than the hook and the bait that the fisherman uses. What's this? For thee thou needest no such deceit. Your beauty is enough to deceive and to attract and to lure the fish. For thou thyself art thy own bait. Thyself art thy own bait. You're so pretty that you can deceive your own self. You know, you can be in love with yourself. This is narcissistic. Very narcissistic. If you understand what narcissism means, you can get my point. That fish that is not catched, by the way, is wrong today, but it used to be correct in the past. Not today. Catch does not exist. Caught. That fish that is not catched thereby, alas, is wiser far than I am. The fish that runs away from you is a very wise fish. Why? Because it didn't get caught by your beauty. Whereas I have been caught. In other words, Sayyatini. That's what he's saying. Other fish run away, but I was caught by you. What is religion here? Tell me. فينا هو الدين هنايا قلت الدين كاينه. That's what it is. There is no religion here. point I'm trying to make today is never be influenced by what you read in relation to critics. Never. All my lectures are based on my own analysis. Huh? I read a lot of books in order to be able to lecture, but I come up with my own idea, with my own analysis. And that's the way I've been working for 56 years. And that's the best way, believe me, if you want to be in the profession. Although the profession is gone, bye-bye. Today they are going to recruit teachers on a contract. 2 years, if they don't feel like them, kick them. وبقى نجيب انا كل عامين نجيب حتى الاستاذ بدا يسخن بلاصتو وبيتعلم الحرفه اذا ما سالاش يتعلم الحرفه السلام عليكم جيب واحد اخر. Because that's what arranges them. Okay. So, as far as I'm concerned, the debate symbolically refers to temptations. All the temptations that people are subject to. But it's not clear. When we read the poem from beginning to end, try to analyze it, we don't find anything religious about it. We need to come to the conclusion ourselves that this is about temptation. Next poem, a valediction, forbidding mourning. Forbid mourning. What is mourning? First of all, we need to understand. Huh? Wait. Mourning is lamenting. When you lament the death of a person, you are mourning him or her. Lamenting. The lamentation. There are people who specialize in mourning. In Egypt, for example, you can hire. They are called the bewailers. The bewailers. يعني يبكي وكيغوت وهذا هو ما عنده علاقة مع الميت. Fortunately, we don't have this. Fortunately. Why do people have to mourn the death of a person? Why? According to religion, you should be happy about the death of a person because death will release that person from all the turmoil of life, from being corrupt. When you are dead, you stop being corrupt. You stop committing sins. You are released. Your body is released. Both your body and soul are released. You're free. You can fly. Of course, this is not easy to accept for anyone, because all of us, like the idiom in English, a drowning man clings to a straw. A drowning man clings to a straw. What is a straw? A straw is a small thing. Al-qisha. That's a straw. When a man is drowning, he tries to cling to it in order to save himself or herself. This is about life. Nobody wants to die. Why? Because they give life too much importance. They value life more than it should. And Allah tells them, no, this is not the life that has value. The life that has value is the hereafter. But people are not convinced, including myself. Huh? لا أزكي نفسي على الله. No, I am a human being. and I cling to life like everybody else. I don't accept that easily. There are people who do. The Prophet ﷺ was given a choice. Would you like to live forever or die? What did he say? بَلِ الرَّفِيقُ الْأَعْلَى. What does that mean? بَلِ الرَّفِيقُ الْأَعْلَى. He wants to be united. The unison between him and God was more important than life itself. Life was nothing for him. My choice is الرَّفِيقُ الْأَعْلَى. I want to be united to my Creator. الرَّفِيقُ الْأَعْلَى. There are rufaqai in life, but all of them are nothing. They are all insignificant companions. Rafiq al-A'la is one with whom I would have a relationship forever. That's why he accepted life, accepted death. Even when his son died, and he had only one son, he didn't mourn for him. Mourning was in his heart, but he didn't show it, in order for people not to do the same. You see, he was always teaching his companion things without even saying anything. He taught them. As virtuous men pass mildly away. Look at the words. Well chosen. Simple but deep in meaning. Virtuous men pass mildly away. Now, to pass away in English means to die. Why pass away? Because you pass away from this word to the next word. Why virtuous men that pass away? Why? Because they know that their conscience is at peace with their own Creator. هذه النفس المطمئنة, virtuous man. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. راضية مرضية. Two. مرضية because God is going to bestow His rida on you. And mardiya because you have been convinced of what you were doing, and therefore your heart in the two ways. If you are virtuous, but you have to be virtuous. In order to pass away like that, you have to be virtuous. How hard is it to be virtuous? Well, you tell me. And whisper to their soul to go. They said something about one of the greatest theologians of the 28th century, Sheikh Sharaf. I don't know whether this is true or not. I don't have a proof. But he said that when the angel of death came to him, he could see, he could feel his presence. And he told all his family to go out. And he was smiling to the angel of death. This is what they said. Allah. Possible, because that man was a saint. That man gave a lot to Islam. That man explained the Quran in a very simple way. Although he goes deep into things, but he tried to simplify it, and that's what made him a great man. Maybe that was the reward of God. Maybe. In any case, because he was virtuous, he welcomed death. And Allahu A'lam, because I haven't been there, I can't state this for sure. As virtuous men pass away, mildly away, mildly, you know, شوية, is not in a hurry, and whisper to their soul to go. Marhaban bil maut. Who could say that? This is what it means. And whisper to their soul to go. People who are virtuous, like Sharahi, for example, whilst some of their sad friends, why are they sad? Said in what sense? Shh. Why are they said? Whilst there is here contrast between virtuous man and non-virtuous man. They are said because they're guilty of something. An-nafs mutma'inna is mutma'inna, in peace. Why? Because it doesn't feel guilty of anything it has done before. That's why it is mutma'inna. Mutma'inna al-nafsha. Right? And there is a welcoming of angels, of this nafs mutma'inna. There is a welcoming. Beautiful angels welcome this virtuous man who goes to the next word. Whereas those who are bad, the angels are ugly. Look at the description of the Quran of these angels. They frighten you when you look at them. You run away from death and you fall into angels that are ugly-looking angels. While some of their sad friends do say, the breath goes now, and some say, no, I don't want to die. In other words, only those who are guilty, only those who don't want to be united with God, have this attitude towards death. This is deeply religious. We can't say, in comparison with the Beethoven, with other poems such as the Flea, that this is not religious. Straightforwardly, the poet goes into the ideas of death being the reliever, the one which will give you freedom forever. Because when you are on earth, you are imprisoned by all the attractions, all the material attractions. You are imprisoned to it. You become prisoner to it. But once you are there, you get your freedom. Eternal freedom. No tear floods, no sigh, tempest move. Sigh, tempest move. This is a metaphor only. What's a sigh, tempest move? That's a sigh. It looks like a tempest. When do people sigh like that? When they are sad. They're sad of leaving this world. Where profanation of our joys to tell the lady our love. It's the only time when love, physical love, is mentioned here. But in this case, there are no details of the beauty of the woman or a description of her body or whatever. No, there's only a mention of love. Why? Because the poet here is being careful not to fall into the trap of description as he has done before. Moving of the earth brings harms and fears. How? How does moving of the earth bring harms and fears? And what is he talking about? Earthquakes. Or just a volcano, for example. Or a tsunami. There are many ways in which God shows you His strength and tell you, hey, you are nothing. I can make you disappear in 1 second, or maybe less than a second. So, let us melt. Melt. Why melt? Do people melt? No. Somehow they do. How? The decomposition of the body, turning from flesh into bones, then into dust. That's melting. Moving of the earth brings harms and fears. Man reckoned what it did and meant, but trepidation of the spheres, thou greater far, is innocent. It's talking about the movement of the sphere. There are always movements of the sphere. There's always animation. The spheres are never quiet because they are meant to be like that. God has created the world that is moving, not silent. The trepidations of the sphere, like when you hear the wind blowing, or when you see the lightning, these are all signs that things are alive in human life. What do they mean to us? That's the question. This is what John Donne is asking. What does the trepidation of the spheres mean to you? What does an earthquake mean to you? What does a flood mean to you? All of these things were set as examples for people to see the greatness of Allah. And most people did not recognize this fact. Oh, those who didn't recognize this fact, they were lost. Similarly to Pharaoh and other people who thought themselves to be beyond the power of God. Moving of the earth bring harms and fears. Man reckons what it did and meant. But trepidation of the spheres, though greater far, is innocent. Is comparing the trepidation of the sphere to the feeling of sadness or mourning that people have when they lose someone. Dull, sublunary lovers. What are dull, sublunary lovers? Two lovers under the moon. They are dull. Why? Dull, sublunary lovers love, whose soul is sense, cannot admit absence. The lovers who want to stay together forever are dull. Why? Because man should know that he is not eternal. That's why. Dull, sublunary lovers love, whose soul is sense, cannot admit. Admit what? Admit death. These sublunary lovers, they usually do what? What do? They want to stay together forever. They think that life continues on forever. Like in the sun rising. The same. Here. Busy old fool, unruly sun, why dost thou thus through windows and through curtains call on us? What is the poet speaking about? Sun rising. What is the poet speaking about? He's telling the sun, stop shining. We don't want you to shine on us. We want the night to carry on forever. Similarly to the Arab poets and singers who say, they sing about it. They want the day to be long. They don't want the sun to shine because they want to carry on loving each other. Who are they? Sublunary, dull lovers. Now this is very deep. Although the metaphors are not easy, but it's very deep. What is he saying? Those who love the human flesh, they are dull, stupid. Those who love God for his own self, those who love the Prophet for his own self, they are the ones who can last forever. These are related to divinity, and they will be related to divinity forever. Absence, because they don't admit absence, meaning they don't want to die, because they are dull, they are stupid. Because it does remove those things which elemented it. What are the elements that elemented love? Physical. The body. I have already mentioned the fact that for John Donne, there is no separation between the physical and the spiritual. They go together. The physical triggers off the spiritual, right? This is his idea. John Donne, not mine. John Donne does not separate physical love from spiritual one. On the contrary, he believes that to reach divine love, you need to have a mixed feeling of physical and spiritual love. That is to say, what we saw in the Curse, in the Flea, or other poems by John Donne. Absence, they don't admit absence, because absence means the absence of the body, physical absence. If they believe that the soul of man is eternal, then they can die without being sad, without mourning. If you mourn this life, then you are mourning something that is not eternal. If you mourn human existence is fania. When the Arab talk about ad-datul fania, they know what they're talking about. Ad-datul fania is that of man. It is liable to destruction, decomposition. It is liable to disappearance, not to eternal existence. If you want eternal existence, then you need to work hard for it. But we, by Allah, so much refined that ourselves know not what it is. Enter assured of the mind, careless eyes, lips, and hands to miss. Our love, the love between the speaker and his beloved, our love is different from the love of others. The love of others is based on physical presence, but our love is much higher than that. It's divine love. Now the writer has changed the love between two people into the love between him and God. Divine love is the one that will last forever. This is where we can draw an analogy between John Donne and... You're not following. Philip Sidney, come on, you've studied the poem. How? How? Where? Leave me, oh love. That's where we can draw an analogy between John Donne and Sir Philip Sidney. Because in both poems there is a rejection of physical love in order to reach divine love. Our two souls, there are two souls, therefore, which are one. This is a confirmation of what I have said before. Two souls become one. With whom? People? People's souls never get together. Whose soul is united to your soul? The soul of God. What they call the supreme soul. The English call it the supreme soul. The supreme soul, Ruh al-Rabbani, Ruh al-Ilah. This is what they call the supreme soul. So the unison between the supreme soul with that of man is what counts for John Donne. There is transcendence of the physical love here. Without telling us, we must understand it ourselves. He is transcendent love, similarly to Sidney. But the big difference, and notice that if you are answering a question of mine about a comparative study between Sidney and John Donne, this is what you should tell me. And you won't be scared about your mark. If you could do it correctly. Sydney tells us things straightforwardly. His metaphors are also complex metaphors, but they are not as complex as John Donne. We don't understand John Donne the way we understand Sir Philip Sidney, although they deal with the same issues. Why? Conceit. That's what does it. Because all of the ideas of John Donne and of the metaphysical poets in general are all conceited. They are conceited. We can't see them clearly. Because of conceit, metaphysical poetry becomes much more difficult than Renaissance poetry. But they talk about the same thing, especially Sidney in relation to John Donne. Our two souls, therefore, which are one. I always repeat this. Hallaj said, أنا الله ومعبودكم تحت قدمي. Who is Hallaj? Mystic. Why did he say Ana Allah? Did he pretend that he was God? No. He's talking about the same thing as John Donne here. Ana wallah datun wahid. Because our souls are united. Huh? This is what the Hallaj said. And they thought that he was saying that he was God. And they killed him. معبودكم تحت قدمي. Why? That's very difficult to explain. If we say معبودكم تحت قدمي means I am superior to your creator. But that's not what he said. Al-Hallaj was standing on a treasure that was buried under the ground. And he said, this is معبودكم, a treasure, money, the material. Huh? You're so materialistic in your view that nothing divine convinces you. Only the physical convinces you. And this is what you worship. You worship gold. That's معبودكم تحت قدمي. But what is interesting is an Allah. Meaning, I and God make one. We are interrelated. My soul, that of a simple human being, joins that of the soul of God. This is what the Prophet said, بَلِ الرَّفِيقُ الْأَعْلَى. Because his unison with God is what counted for him. John Donne is not like the prophets. Our two souls, therefore, which are one, thou I must go, endure not yet a breath, but an expansion. Someone should tell me this. يلا شي حد يشرح لنا. Simple, very simple. But with all the material that I have provided you with, you can explain this. Our two souls, therefore, which are one. I said here that the writer is speaking about the unison of two lovers that will transcend into the unison of man with God. Right? Two types of unisons. One transcends the other. Physical one, two lovers united. And this unison transcends the physical into the spiritual. The love for the flesh turns into the love of God. Though I must go. Must go means must. Good. Endure not yet a breach, but an expansion. A breach is like a separation. Separation of the human body from life, from earth. Why does he talk about an expansion instead of a breach? Death is just a breach. What is breach? A stopping of existence of the human body. Why does he call it an expansion? That is not just a breach, it is an expansion. Why? Yes, he's talking about eternal life. An expansion means an expansion forever. Why does God say that the hereafter is much better than now? The hereafter is better than now. Why? Because now is only a temporary length of time that you have. There you have an expansion of that temporary life. An expansion into the infinite. That's what eternity means. Notice that the words are very simple, but you have to dig deeply into the words to understand their meaning. Why? Because of the conceit. Though I must go, endure, not yet a breach, but an expansion. Although I have to die, but I'm not sad. Why? Because my life will be expanded into eternal life. Allah says, وَالدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. خَيْرٌ, better, وَأَبْقَى. Abqa means what? Yeah, Abqa means eternal, forever. Right? If you convince yourself about this, then you convince yourself that your life is worth nothing. If they be two, there are two. So here we come to the metaphor of the compass. If they be two, there are two. So as stiff twin compasses. Stiff twin compasses. The compass that he is referring to is the compass of the draftsman. It's a special one, you know. You know what a draftsman is? Dessinateur. وشي واحد اللي كيدير طوموبيل ولا كيدير شي حاجه ديال ديسان That's what a draftsman is. He uses a special compass, not like the one we use at school. No, it's special. If they be two, there are two. So as stiff twin compasses are two. Thy soul, the fixed foot, makes no show to move, but that if the other do. We are such united lovers that when one moves, the other follows. We are in total harmony with each other. Who? Is he still speaking about lovers? Yes, he does. He still speaks about lovers. But at the same time, he's transcending this physical love into the divine love. To be united to God, you will be united forever. But to be united to your beloved one, not forever, just for a temporary time. The everlasting love is that of God. Leave me, O love. Sydney, doesn't this remind you of Sydney? He's speaking the same language. Because you are bound to die and disappear. I want a love that will last forever. And the only love that will last forever is divine love. If they be two, there are two. So a stiff twin compasses are two. Thy soul, the fixed foot, makes no show to move, but that if the other do. What does Allah tell us? Feel the presence of God with you everywhere. All the time. You are like that mixed. Me included, right? If our faith were really that strong, then we should follow this. We should have the idea that God is with us everywhere. Then we will fear His wrath. You know what wrath means? Ghadab. Then we will, if we feel that we are not separated from God, That's our ticket to Al-Jannah. The only one. We need to build up a strong relationship, as strong as those two legs of the compass are. And this is exactly what John Donne is telling us, although he's not a Muslim. The sole fixed foot makes no show to move, but that if the other do. And thou, it in the center, sit. What sits in the center? Center. Center of what? The compass. Where is the compass? What is a compass?
Compass is something like this. What do I do with a compass? Circle. What is the circle symbolic of?
The earth. The earth is round. Allah has created the earth as a round thing. It's a circle. Who is the center of this earth? Man, human beings. Man is the center of the earth, right? He's talking about man here. Man is the center of this earth. He believes himself to be the center, but he's nothing. Huh? Man is too full of himself to think of his weakness. He never thinks that he's weak. Man is always thinking himself to be stronger than his own creator. Man always think of himself as the center of the world. Everybody. Oh, look at our ministers. They believe themselves to be the center of our country. They believe themselves to have the right of life and death on the population. Who are they? Huh? Who are they? What can they offer anyway? As far as I'm concerned, they offer nothing. They take away from you. They never give anything. Although the two legs of the compass sit in the center, each one is keeping an eye on the other because they want to remain together forever. Similarly to the legs, twin legs of the compass. It leans. This, look at it. Does this move or not? One moves, the other stays fixed, but it follows. It follows. Although it is fixed, it follows. And this is a perfect metaphor of what? Harmony. The harmony of the union. Between man and man? No, between man and God. The love of God is not easy. To love God is not easy. You know, when you love God, you forsake your own body. Similarly to Rabi al-Adawi. When she said, عرفت الهوى يوم عرفت هواك. هوى الله. ماشي هوى الإنسان. عرفت الهوى يوم عرفت هواك. Love for me meant nothing until I learned how to love you, God. Simple words, but these are poetic words. They're very strong. She said, أحبك حبين, حب الهوى وحب النداء. What does it mean? This is very deep indeed. This is like metaphysical poetry. Abdullah al-Faisal was a great poet. I don't know if he's alive or not. I don't know. Great poetry. This is really very deeply religious poetry. Why? I love you for your own sake. And I love you for my own sake. I love you for my own sake because in loving you, I save myself from going to hell. And therefore, my love towards you is double. Since it allows me to be pure and to remain forever in heaven. Double love. But a double love for, she couldn't say for the physical presence of God, because God does not have a physical presence. At least we don't know. Nobody knows how God is. In spite of all the metaphors of the Quran, we cannot embody God. Terceed ilah is haram. You cannot do that. You cannot say for sure that God has eyes, or God has hands, or God has legs. And though it in the center sit, yet when the other far doth roam, it leans, hearkens after it, and grows erect as that comes home. Grows erect. It stands like this. Such wilt thou be to me. Now, is he speaking about God or about his beloved lady? What do you think? Such wilt thou be to me, who must, like the other foot, obliquely run. Is it talking about God or about the beloved lady? Both. Both. I told you from the beginning that the poet here is trying to transcend physical love to divine love. Throughout the poem, he's mixing the two together. He's mixing divine love with physical love. Such wilt thou be to me, like that compass, the legs of the compass, who must, like the other foot, follow. And this is the way you are meant to be, especially couples, you know. When Allah says, "Taskuru ilayha," as-sakina means a lot of things. You have to be in harmony with the other. You can't tear each other to pieces and continue to live. Unfortunately, that's the case. It's reality. But normally, the couple should live in harmony with each other because they complement each other. That's how they are meant. They were meant. And they are meant today. Such wilt thou be to me, who must like the other foot obliquely run. Thy firmness makes my circle just. Thy firmness makes my circle just. We are talking about compass. If it's firm, fixed, the circle is perfect. But the writer is also talking about the firmness of my love towards you. Who? The beloved? God. My firm love in you is what will allow me to stay forever, makes me where I began. Makes me, which means the last line, the couplet. The firmness makes my circle just. Perfect. Firmness. And we said physically the firmness is that of the leg of the compass, which allows the circle to be perfect. But how about what is behind the lines? The firmness logically refers to the firmness of the love of man towards God. When your love is firm, it doesn't shake, you know. If your love is firm, makes me end where I began. Where did I begin? Where did I begin? Now you missed the metaphor altogether. Where did Adam begin?
Heaven.
In heaven. If I love God firmly, then I will go back to where I started. That is to say, to heaven. I will regain paradise. This is paradise regained of John Donne, not of John Minton. The paradise regained here is the real paradise for everyone. If I want to be living in heaven forever, where I
started, Adam started, then my love for God must be firm. Otherwise what? If my love for God is not firm, I shall live eternally in hell. Huh? Roast, be destroyed, made again, be destroyed, made again, be destroyed, made again. خالدين فيها أبدا. When your skin melts by the fire, God makes another skin grow on your body. Then you will burn and melt again. Another skin. نبدلهم جلودا غيرها. Skin after skin, you know, until you can taste the pleasure of hell, not the pleasure of heaven. Allah uses the word تذوق العذاب. Why تذوق? تذوق is negative or positive? Very positive. Why does he say تذوق العذاب? Why? Because the pleasure you will have will change into torture. And you will taste it as if someone is tasting the pleasure of heaven. ذوقوا العذاب. Another, I became zapped here. ذوقوا العذاب. تذوقوا العذاب بما كنتم تفعلون. This is your own deeds, not mine. I didn't tell you to do this. If your love is very firm in God, you will be saved. This is my own interpretation. John Donne believes in Jesus Christ. John Donne believes in Jesus Christ, who has made a sacrifice for humanity to live on. John Donne is a Christian who believes that Jesus Christ is going to save him from hell. If I believe firmly in him, if I love him, he will save me. You can wait. I mean, we can say that to John Donne. Why am I saying this? Because when I concluded my poem, I made it feel as if the poet is saying, I should have very firm, strong love in God in order to be saved. But the God of John Donne is not mine. His God is Jesus Christ. Because in his mind, both Jesus and God are one. And there are actually three. Trinity. Trinity. And that is kufr. Why? Simply because Allah says, لَقَدْ كَفَرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ ثَالِثُ ثَلَاثٍ. Full stop. Thank you.